All right, welcome to Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Phillips from Village of Lansing PD. He has 27 years experience in law enforcement. Welcome to the show, Chief Phillips. Thank you so much for being here.
Paige, thank you for having me. You have such an important topic here, so I'm grateful to be a part of it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to our conversation. I wanted to ask you, 27 years is a long time to be in law enforcement. What are some of the things that you've seen change and evolve over the last 27 years?
Well, I got to say, I'm very fortunate to have such a long career. But we've seen a lot of changes through the years, and the biggest thing is probably how people view us. When I first got on, it seemed like law enforcement were the heroes around, and in the fire department, we didn't talk much about them. But of course, now the fire department are our heroes. But no, it's really changed throughout the country, and there's been a lot of significant events that have affected that. And we can appreciate that. We see that. We know that there's been some bad things that have happened out there. But I got to be honest with you, our town really appreciates what we do. And we don't get that. Some of the bad things that you might see happen in the big inner cities, we get a lot of support from our community. So that's just one of the biggest things. It's just how people view us. Like I said, very lucky to have that here in our town.
And how important do you think that is to have community and town and city support, especially when it comes to, maybe morale and mental health of the officers? How important do you think that is to have that support?
Well, that's huge, and it really starts from the top. It starts from our administration and how they view us.
Mhm.
To have people appreciate what you do, that's the biggest thing. And then we can pass that down. So the support that we have from our administration is huge. And then we really try and look out for our people. Just having that support, having the people that have your back, that's one of the biggest things that helps us be successful in our community. Our community trusts us. We always talk about putting money in the bank. So we're out there doing things for them every day. We do our national night out. We do torch run. We do a lot of events. Whenever somebody has something going on in town, like even a block party, we make sure we send officers there. They're not there for security. They're there to just mingle with people. It kind of trains them to get used to dealing in non-confrontational situations, and it lets people get to know us even better. So when we have something going on in the community, we're there for them. And if something bad happens, they understand that we're on their side. And I think that's the biggest part of the success that we've had throughout the years.
I really love that you said, like, you get to see them in the good times, and then they know that you have their back in the bad times, because I think that to me, that sounds like a partnership, and you're not just seeing people on their worst days. And we know like how important it is to have some joy, and it's not always the bad stuff. It can be the fun stuff and the community events, and it doesn't have to always be that way. And there are a lot of organizations I know that maybe don't have that, where it's like it just feels like every time you see someone, it's on the worst day possible. So I love that you have that partnership with your community so that, it's not all the bad stuff, it's the good stuff too.
For sure. I always say that we deal with bad people or good people having a bad day. So we come in contact with people in a crisis most of the time. And that's our job to bring them back down with their emotions. The de-escalation training that we have, it's just, you want to say it's common sense, but it's not. It takes a little bit of work. So yeah, by us being involved in the community, they know us in our good times, they know us in our bad times, they know we're going to be there for them.
I love that. And for anyone who maybe doesn't know who you are, what did the 27 years look like for you for, various assignments, some of the experiences that you've had in this career? And how did you prioritize your own wellness throughout that time?
That's a great question. I've been so fortunate to be in a different position just about every 5 years in my career. And I really stress that you need some variety. Uh, Pushing a squad car day after day, it gets to be a tough job. And those that aren't prepared for that, if you're not doing something different, it can be stressful. So for me, I got hired back in the late 90s, and we had to be paramedics when we got hired. So our first 2 years, we're concentrating on paramedic school and learning the job. Both are very difficult. We didn't realize how difficult paramedic school would be until we got into it. So the first several years on the job, you're really just learning what to do and what's out there. Everybody always says it takes about 5 years to see everything, and that's probably accurate, depending on how busy your town is. So I got lucky after 5 years. I got a chance to become a detective, went into investigations, and got a chance to see the different side of things. We always say you need that investigative side to be a better supervisor because you see both sides. You really get a chance to learn the other half, the victims and dealing with offenders and trying to really advocate for your victims. So the investigations was definitely my most enjoyable time here at the PD. You got the chance to go out and just really look for bad guys and help good people. So that was fun. After 4 or 5 years of doing that, I was fortunate enough to be a sergeant. I got promoted and spent some time on the road. After 2 or 3 years there, I got a chance to go into, I got more of a support services with a village preparedness coordinator. Again, dealing more with the community and then dealing with more government officials and different sides there. So I just had a lot of variety. Got lucky enough to go back on the road as a lieutenant. Everybody will tell you that is probably the best position in the PD. You have people answering you. You're, of course, responsible for everything that goes on in town. But your job is really seeing the big picture and taking care of the town. Then my favorite position, I will say, was running investigations as a lieutenant. That's when, as a detective, you're involved in your case, and maybe three or four that you're working at a time. But as the supervisor in there, you're overseeing all of your detectives' cases and just seeing how everybody's affected with the different type of calls that go on.
Mm.
You get to help a lot of people, and it's kind of nice to see the bad guys get locked up and really see that you're making a difference. So that's the my patrol portion of it. I've been chief for the last 4 years. That's been just a very different experience. There's a little bit of law enforcement involved, but honestly, you get hit from so many different angles. Whenever the phone rings, it's just like, what's next? And I do love that. It's a lot of variety. You just every day is different, and you just get a chance to affect so many more lives in this position. Our biggest focus is usually trying to concentrate on our people and how they can go out and help others now. But honestly, you're dealing with public works, you're dealing with the administrators, the mayors, and it's so far it's been good. It hasn't been contentious in any way. I haven't had any major disasters happening around here, so that makes it a lot more enjoyable. But I know it's a long explanation of it, but I just really stress the importance of doing something different all the time. There's nothing wrong with being a patrol officer for 30 years. I got to think that would be very stressful and difficult to have a career life balance with that.
No, I love that. And I would imagine that if you have variety, you have so many different perspectives, and maybe you start to build a little bit of empathy and understanding for what other people are doing within the organization. And it gives you more of that like team mentality. I think if you only know the one thing, it's hard to understand what other people are doing or other people are going through, maybe physically, mentally on the job. And so that variety gives you different perspectives and maybe a little bit of empathy for what people are doing and the impact that they're making around you. I also have heard, and I don't know if you've heard the same thing or if you've felt the same thing, that I've heard that usually burnout happens every 3 to 5 years. Have you heard this or have you seen that?
Yes, and if you're not prepared for that, I can see that it happens often. That's why we really do try and shuffle people around, even if it's just in a different role within patrol division. We might assign them to a traffic duty or something different. But yeah, the same monotony over and over. With police, no 2 days are alike. That's the best thing about it. But when you continually see the difficult situations time and time again, I can see how that burnout really can come into play. So that's why we really do stress that you have to take care of that, take care of your personal life, and have that balance.
100%. And, we kind of talked about this offline, but I think that this is something that I've learned over the years of working with law enforcement is that you guys do a really, really amazing job of taking care of the community and making sacrifices for this career, but maybe don't always do the best job of taking care of yourselves. You know, you're so in the service mindset of like, how can I help others, that oftentimes you forget to take care of yourself. And I know one of the things that you just mentioned, but you also mentioned to me offline, was that kind of home work balance and, you know, making sure that you're taking care of yourself. What are some of the things that you stress within your organization, or some of the things that are important to you when it comes to taking care of yourself?
Yeah, that's a great topic. Whenever you ask somebody, why did you get into law enforcement? They always say, because they want to help others. And it seems, kind of cliche, but it is true. We're all out here to serve others. You have to have that service oriented mentality to really be good at what you do. Otherwise, it is just a job, and you can recognize that. So we all want to help others, but we do have to recognize that we have to take care of ourselves. The work-life balance is, we really do try and stress that. You know, when you start to have kids, it becomes a financial grind. We're not out here going to be millionaires. We all know that. But there are a lot of opportunities to make more money. There's a lot of side jobs out here. We're very fortunate. We have for grant opportunities where we can go out and work extra details. We have a Walmart in our town. We have a lot of opportunities to work more and more and more. Well, when you start to get a financial burden on you, you see guys really doing those extra shifts and working more and more. And we have to put a limit on it. We put a limit of no more than 20 extra hours a week so that you're not getting yourself burned out. Again, trying to develop that balance. That's the biggest thing. So we really want them to be home with their family and have that balance because, with shift work, oftentimes, even if you are home, you might be sleeping when they're up, when your family's up. And that is so difficult because you never get the good sleep. I always look out and I'm worried about our officers that are on midnights. I know it was difficult when I was on midnights, and going back and forth is the most difficult. You work days, you work afternoons, you work nights. Well, when I got hired, we had a spell shift that you would work 2 day shifts, 2 afternoon shifts, and 2 midnight shifts in one week. We
Mm,
did that for a month, and then you rotated. And my wife knew that whenever I was on spell shift, that she just kind of did what she could to get by. And I don't think it should be like that anymore. We've done a really good job of trying to identify getting people in the right shifts. We have a handful of people that like midnights. So we work 12-hour shifts, but we have kind of developed a hybrid to where we have one shift that's permanent days, one shift that's permanent nights, and then another day off group that rotates.
mm,
So with that, you have, of course, more senior guys on the day shift, but you have a night shift that's kind of used to working nights. So we know at least half the time those guys want to be there, and they're a little bit more adjusted. So, just having that sleep balance, I would say probably the most difficult thing to deal with is sleep.
mm.
Uh, we all know that when you come home after a long shift at 6 o'clock in the morning, you're getting ready to fall asleep, and that's when the world turns on. And the noises start, and that's really, really the biggest challenge. So for me, it was always try and get home and get to sleep before everybody woke up, and then I was good to go. But we understand that's hard for our people. So we're always trying to look out for them to make sure that they're not working too much and they have more time off in between shifts.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned sleep, because I do think that that's so wildly important, and a lot of people maybe don't recognize the importance of sleep. And there's so much science and data coming out right now that talks about how if you miss even 1 or 2 hours of sleep, that it just drastically impacts your performance. And I saw something, and I'm not going to be able to quote it correctly, so don't actually quote me on this one, but it was something along the lines of, if you missed 1 or 2 hours of sleep, it's equivalent to operating intoxicated. And obviously, you're not intoxicated, but it's, how quickly you can respond and your decision making is equivalent to someone who's intoxicated. And so sleep is wildly important. And I love that that's one of the focuses within your organization. We also know that stress impacts sleep. So schedule impacts sleep, and then stress compounded on top of it is also going to impact sleep. And that can reduce your deep sleep by 30%, which is huge. So,
Well, I'll take that one step further. The longer you go without sleep, the worse you are. So, if you're at the end of a 16-hour shift, so again, I'll back up a little bit. We work the 12-hour shifts, but sometimes when there's a call off, you have to work over. Obviously, we can't work over 12 more hours, but we try and break that up. We used to have the officers work the additional six. So it would be an 18-hour shift. At the end of an 18-hour shift, I'm not going to know the science either behind this, but I can tell that you're impaired. You're definitely not making clear decisions. So we
Yeah.
always try and look out when somebody's being forced, those last 2 hours, try and get them off the street. Try and just have them answering on-station calls, phone calls, stuff like that. We did reduce it to now they're only allowed 6 hours, I'm sorry, 4 hours extra. So we max it out at 16 hours straight. And then we do require now 8 hours off in between shifts because
Okay.
we understand that, you got travel time and the stress of trying to get to sleep after being amped up. You're not going to get 3, 4 hours sleep at best. So sleep is so important, the stress on that. So you have to plan for it. 20 plus years of doing the shift work throughout my life. There was always some rotating in there, but now that I work pretty much a straight day shift, I don't want anybody to get jealous about working straight days, but I wake up every day at the same time without an alarm clock. I go to sleep at the same time. My body feels so much better. I know most of our patrol officers working that shift work can't do that, but
Mhm.
they have to try the best they can. That's why we came up with that hybrid shift to where, some of the midnight guys do stay on that midnight shift even on their day off.
Yeah.
And that's hard, what's going on at 2 in the morning on a Wednesday, but it helps them stay a little bit more balanced.
Yeah, no, I love that that's something that you guys focus on. And, there are other industries out there that you cannot work if you've been on for X amount of time. Like have you ever been on a plane and you get delayed and then they're like, "Oh, sorry, the crew's been working too long. They're not allowed to work. They got to go. We got to find a new crew." And I think that and maybe that's a silly comparison, but I think that like when you start to say, "Hey, like this is a safety thing. We want to make sure our people are safe. We want to make sure the community is safe and that, our people are making effective decisions and they're not, quote unquote, like feeling impaired because they're so tired and they've been working so long." I think that it's a great focus, especially in the context of safety for everybody, making sure that you're not working them into the ground for too long. Um, One of the things that we talked about, and this is something just across the country that most organizations are really challenged with is staffing. And we know that right now we're in this space where there's a lot of retirements that are coming up. Maybe it's a little bit harder to hire new employees. And I know that when we talked, you guys are seeing a lot of laterals, and there are a lot of people who are wanting to come to your organization. What are you guys doing differently that's enticing people to come over to you guys?
That is a great topic, and there are so many challenges throughout the country, and even our neighboring communities are really struggling. And I appreciate what they're going through. When I made chief 4 years ago, I believe we were down about 13 officers. We have a 63 officers in our police department, so being down that many, it was definitely a struggle. Uh, we didn't have laterals at the time, so I brought that to our mayor and let her know that there's going to be challenges with it. However, I think the benefits will pay off in the long run. So with that, looking at laterals, we really had to do a deep background and thorough interviews. Had to find out why people are wanting to go jump from town to town to town. That's the last thing we wanted. We didn't want to be training people and then have them go somewhere else. So we wanted them to be committed to our police department. So, we had to look out and find out why they were looking to leave. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of them had maybe one small issue in their background. Maybe it was a little bit bigger issue. But what we looked at was it an integrity issue? Was it an accident? Was it a mistake? Was it something that they can overcome? And believe it or not, given some of our officers a second chance, they have come here and done such a great job because they're grateful that they got that second opportunity with a clean slate. Now, I've had one or two officers who come here after 2 years have already gone into specialty positions and are shining here. And what we really did try and do is with the laterals, we were hiring a lot of young officers, and we had a lot of officers with not much experience. And then we had a lot of officers with a lot of experience. We were missing that middle group.
Mm.
So by hiring the laterals, that brought in people with 3, 4, 5 years of experience and have got stuff from other communities and they brought that to us. So with that, we're not just making them stay in patrol for 10 years to prove themselves. I mentioned to you before, we try and put round pegs in round holes. One of our detectives came here. He had like 8 years experience somewhere else as a detective. He got in our detective division pretty quickly and has done just an incredible job. Not only is he handling his own caseload, he's sharing his experiences with our other detectives. Solid Detective Bureau, not knocking them, but the more experiences we have in there, the better off all of us are. So laterals was big for us. That was a huge thing. You mentioned just why people might want to come to our department. Yeah, we have a reputation of being a good department. We really do. It's not from everything that I've done. I'll be honest with you. The people that have laid the foundation before me have done a great job. I mentioned to you that we had to be paramedics. I really do believe that higher the bar for anybody wanting to come here.
Mm.
We were an accredited agency for a long time, so our standards were pretty high. So we got a good reputation, but there's still challenges out there. I believe our mayor was our first female police officer in Lansing. So she trusts us. She knows what we go through. She sets the example and she passes that down through us. So she wants to make sure her police department is top notch. So we've worked with the unions to make sure we have a solid contract. We're not going to get rich. I mentioned that to you before, but we're solid. We're not going to be striving for money. Not going to have people leaving because they might want a few dollars more. Overtime opportunities, grant opportunity, employment. That makes this place a little bit more desirable. So I think that's another reason that we've been successful. Combining all of that together, I do believe that makes us more of a destination department instead of a stop along the way.
Well, and I love your philosophy of the round peg, round hole and putting people where they fit or maybe where they want to go and where they're passionate. And we talked a little bit about this before, but to me, I would imagine that that helps retain them too. Like you want them to come in, but then how do you keep them there as well? Like you said, and they're not just stopping by and jumping somewhere else after. How can you just maybe give a little bit more insight into that philosophy of like, hey, we want people to like go the places that they are and how you're encouraging that and the different training that might be required for that. And if you're seeing an improvement in retention by doing that.
Sure, sure. A happy employee definitely causes you less problems and they do a better job. We're very fortunate that we have a lot of specialty positions here in our police department. I'll take, for example, canine. We've had a lot of canines through the year. We had a TAC officer who was just fantastic with a dog. He's just really good at what he does. Most of the time, when somebody makes supervisor, they become a sergeant. They lose a lot of those responsibilities because we want them to focus on their supervision. Well, we were able to create a 5-man TAC team, and he was able to keep the dog and lead his TAC team with the dog. What better place to have a canine is out there with your TAC team, where it's needed. So he is thrilled to be able to keep what he has learned through the years and still pass that on to the younger TAC officers. We have, opportunities to be in other task forces, major crimes task force. We have a CERT, which is like a SWAT team. We've had officers that have been on there. Well, when they make supervision, we don't want to immediately take that away from them. They're able to keep that and then pass that on again to the younger people. So again, putting people where they want to be. We can't make everybody happy. I mean, somebody's got to be out there hitting the beat, and we appreciate that. So we try and help them out as much as possible. But if somebody has experience in something, we don't want to just take that away from them. We want them to pass that along. Team approach. We have a lot of instructors here. Our officers go out there and we try and get them trained to be a train the trainer type situation to where, even just a little thing like training for a taser, that gives a patrol officer a responsibility. It gives him a little something different, something to be proud of. Build his resume a little bit, make him prepared to take that sergeant's test. So again, round peg, round hole, that's really worked for us.
I love it. Every time you say it, I kind of laugh because I just think it's an awesome philosophy and like you can visualize that, when you say it of like it's the right fit. Um, one of the things that I still have conversations all the time with agencies is the challenge of mental health. And, we know that your careers are incredibly rewarding. They're also incredibly challenging. And there's still this challenge of, various tragedies within agencies that happen and how that impacts the organization and how you recover and the wellness resources that you have in place to be able to support mental health. Are you willing to share maybe some of the things that you've seen or the organization has maybe experienced over the years? And then what are some of the resources that you've put in place to help with those things?
Yeah, unfortunately, we do see a lot of tragedy. We'll go to call to call, you know, basic answer, respond to different calls, but then all of a sudden you might see a tragedy. That happens often in our job, but we're able to kind of separate ourselves from that when we move on to that next call, and we kind of put that in a box and we don't really deal with it. That's very common, but we've had some tragedy that struck our police department throughout the years, more than one. I think back before I got here, there was an officer who did take his own life. He had a lot going on, and I don't know if anybody was here to support him or not. I'm sure there were several that tried, and I don't want to speak poorly of that at all. But we recognize nowadays that you really do have to check in with people. We have to know what's going on with them. We have to provide resources for them because we're a proud group. We're all type A personalities. We can, take whatever you throw at us. But sometimes, that gets to you, and you really have to take time to make sure people are all right. We try and do check-ins as much as possible when somebody might be off for even just a small injury. We want to check in with them, see how they're doing. We're not perfect. I don't get it right all the time, but I got a great team who's always trying to help me. So keeping an eye on our people is important. We've created a peer-to-peer group, support group. I'll be honest with you, that's meant to be within the patrol division. No structural differences. So, I try and step back from that. I check
Mhm.
in with our guys that are part of it, but they're really running that. And they don't share with me how often people check in with them, but they know that it's important that they're there for others. So we think that's another big thing that we do to try and keep an eye on our people. Again, you go back to putting people in the right place. I've got a lieutenant who's a bodybuilder. He's got a history of doing that. So we put him in charge of our health program. He really focuses on, spreading the word about eating properly, exercise. He has taken ownership in that. I've got a sergeant who's taken the ownership in the peer-to-peer group. So what we really do try and do is spread those responsibilities around. And again, if you're passionate about it, it's so much easier to do well with it. I'm not a gun guy. We have people that, take care of the guns, so put people in charge and let them take care of things that they're good at. Makes my job a lot easier, that's for sure.
And one of the things that you had said, and I'm going to kind of maybe just highlight that for a moment, when we talked offline was you said role models, having role models within your organization. And I think that when you have people who are passionate about it and take ownership of it, it kind of holds people accountable, right? A little bit. Because if you see them in the hallway, you're like, hey, did you do this? Did you like, go to the gym or did you, try that meal prep plan or whatever it is? It's like, oh man, like, so having that within the organization that kind of holds people accountable a little bit, but it also inspires people. I think that when you have people who are excited and they're talking about it. I've heard it called the canaries. If you've heard that before, where they're like chirping around, they're really excited about it. I think that that does help with the overall wellness and creating that momentum in that space. But I also really liked that you said you check in on people. I've had feedback from individuals who have said the opposite and how hard that was for them, when they were injured or, going through something and they're like, my organization didn't reach out to me at all. And I felt super alone. I didn't feel like I was valued, and they said like that they started to really question, why they were even doing this job, because it's like, well, if no one cares about me, like what's like, why am I, you know, putting myself out there every day if no one's checking in? So I love that that's something that you guys really try to do and try to make sure that your employees know that they are valued and that they are an important part of the team.
Yeah, that's a good point. I probably could do better. I'll be honest with you. But what we do is try and have a team approach to it. I got
Yeah.
a deputy chief who's in charge of most of our personnel here, and he's a very passionate guy and great guy. And that's one of the things he takes pride in. He checks on him. I got a guy off with an injury right now, a lieutenant, and it's golf season, and he likes to golf, and his hand's injured. So we're checking in with him and seeing how he's holding up, not being able to be out there on the golf course. Just little things like that do make a huge difference. Again, I need to do better. We all could do better. But I think we keep that a priority and make sure that somebody is checking on somebody for sure. We had a couple officers go out after an officer involved shooting probably 10 years ago. One of our officers was shot wrestling with somebody, and he ended up going through some difficult times. And I don't know if he got the help that he needed, but he definitely had some stressful situations, and he ended up taking disability. And then we had another officer at that scene who ended up taking out the bad guy. Not sure if I phrased that properly for our podcast here, but he was involved with the shooting and he had a lot of stresses. And I don't know if we did a good enough job back then. They both went out on disability. I feel for them all the time. And I should be reaching out to them more often, even though they've separated from our department 10 years ago. We don't reach out enough. So again, we get involved with our busy lives, and we probably all need to take more responsibility towards taking care of our people. I don't think you can reach out to them too much.
And I think that anyone who's listening, I mean, we've all been there where like hindsight's 2020, and you're just like, wow, like maybe I didn't do the best job, or maybe I could have done better. I think we all have those experiences. And I think even just having the awareness is so important. And that's kind of the first step of like having that awareness. But then learning from our past experiences, regardless of what role you're in or what type of situation it is, I think that we can always learn and I think we can always try better. I think that goes back to like that type A personality, right? You want to be the best. And so I'm sure you're doing a great job, but I think I relate to that too, where I'm always like, well, how can I be better? How can I be better? How can I improve? And so I think that one, having the awareness around, past experiences, two, like how can we learn from those things? How can we improve always? I think we're always going to have that. Even if you did a really good job, you're always going to have that thought process of like, how can I do better? I do think that, one of the things, and kind of to your point of like reaching out to people once they've left the organization, we know that retirement can be tricky, and it can be really challenging for people transitioning from this career where you have that team mentality, you have the camaraderie, you have this sense of purpose and, deep why, for what you do every day. And then you transition into life after this career and maybe feel like you've lost some of those things, and having to redefine what your life looks like and what you do on a day-to-day basis. How do you think that individuals or organizations can maybe support that transition better? Do you think that there's anything that can be done that can help people in that transition?
You bring up such a great point, and I wish there was a magic answer to that, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm age 53 right now, so I can retire. And a lot of the guys that I got hired with and went through my career with have all gone into retirement now. And I got to be honest with you, not all of them are as happy as they thought they would be. They don't have that purpose, like you mentioned, every day to get up and go and help others. That seems to be a big theme for all of us. We like to help others. Not knocking anything any of them have done. Some of them have done great things, but I look at some of them. Their health may not be as good as it could be because they don't have that purpose to get up every morning and go out and try something new and do something. So I think it's important that we talk about it earlier instead of waiting until, hey, you're retiring next month. What are you going to do?
Mm.
I myself have been trying to avoid talking about it, just because I don't want to be looking to that next stage in my life. And maybe that's a mistake for me. I want to give 3 more years. I want to max out at 30 years. And I don't know if I'm done with law enforcement at that point either. Maybe I look for another job to stay connected as well. But I'm nervous to start looking at other opportunities because I'm afraid I might find something and want to go jump on that when I really do want to finish out what I'm doing here. So yeah, retirement's always an issue. Again, I wish we could do something better to plan for it a little bit better, and I myself need to learn from that as well.
Yeah, and I think even just like you said, talking about it earlier, I do think that um I can see where you're coming from of like maybe not like wanting to like focus on your role now and I also think that for younger officers, like when I was in my 20s, I'm not thinking about the future like that, it's like very much like day to day and it's not like the big picture. I think that proactive wellness is always harder or proactivity is always harder than, being reactive to things. But I do think that talking about it, maybe having a little bit more awareness about it, and then putting in place some things maybe with, finances and physical and mental health early in the career can help you to at least be made better prepared for, when that transition does eventually come, because at least you'll have your physical and your mental health, you'll have some money in the bank so that when you do transition, you're set up for success and longevity. I did want to ask you one final question, and it's in the context of wellness, but what words of advice would you give to someone who is earlier in their career when it comes to wellness? Maybe something that you wish you would have known, or something that's helped you along the way that can help them prepare for that longevity.
Yeah, I would absolutely advise them just to prioritize your health, physical health, mental health, of course, but being active, that is the biggest thing, and finding things that you can do that you enjoy to be active with. I'm an avid golfer. I love to golf. I probably cheat a little too much by riding in the golf cart. But I need to stay a little bit more healthy because I still have that passion for it at age 53. Well, now that I retire, 3 years from now or longer, I want to be able to play golf into my 70s, 80s, and be good at it.
Yeah.
But if you don't start that early, that history, that preparation to stay healthy, what are you going to do in retirement? I've seen too many people that have a lifestyle where you're sitting around a sedentary lifestyle, and then when you retire, you want to go and explore Italy and walk and hike and do natural parks and all that great stuff, but you're not healthy enough to do so. So prioritize that early in life and make that a habit. Like I said, one of our lieutenants, that is one of his main focuses is to stay healthy and keep us all healthy. So we try and look to him as a role model, a mentor to try and keep us all healthy, but definitely prioritize your health, plan for the future, stay active. That's the biggest thing I got to say. It's just you got to stay active, and honestly, just the energy that you burn by exercising helps you reduce that stress. You know all that. That's a whole different topic there. But being able to burn that stress off is a huge benefit to exercise as well.
Thank you. I really appreciate your words of wisdom and your insights. I appreciate you coming on today's show. If there's anything that we missed, I'll give you the floor for a couple minutes, but that's all I have for you, and I really do appreciate your time.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your time and your dedication to this important topic. The last thing I'll just wrap up with how important family needs to be. We try and treat people around here like their family. We really do. And that's the old cliche, oh, everybody's family around here, but we do. We want to care about them because a happy person, a happy worker is going to be a better worker, of course. But we give a lot of time to others. We really do. When you get off work, you need to spend time with your family and enjoy that. I'm a spiritual guy. I've been taught that, it's got to be God, spouse, children. And that's because you're with your children for 18 years, you're with your spouse for life, and God for eternity. So that's my 2 cents there with my religion. But you got to prioritize them. You got to keep them. You got to keep that happy, healthy relationship. When you step away from this job, you want to have a partner in life. My wife and I are empty nesters now, and we explore and do a lot of different things together. That keeps me happy here at work too, though. That life work life balance is so important that I think that will make you successful no matter what you do. So again, thank you for your time. I applaud what you're doing, and I encourage everybody out there to stay happy, healthy, continue to serve others because that's what we do.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time so much.